Welcome back to the Unlimited podcast. Today we're speaking to visual artists Christopher Samuel, Hassan Al-Zafar and Shiru Masuyama. First, we spoke to Christopher Samuel about the archive of the unseen. Can you introduce yourself and talk about what kind of work you make as an artist?
Well, hello, I'm Christopher Samuel. I'm an artist that makes work about disability and identity politics, which often kind of echoes many facets of my own lived experience. I do it in a way I'm constantly kind of seeking to understand my own identity as a disabled person and kind of the inequalities and marginalization that I encounter. I often respond with humor and urgency as an approach. And also my work, I kind of try to thrive on making my work accessible to everybody. And by that, I mean anybody can understand it. You don't need to be looking at art regularly to get my work.
Okay, that's great. Can you tell us the name of the work that you're showing at the festival and describe it, bearing in mind that they won't be able to see it or be there?
So the name of the work is The Archive of an Unseen. So I'm going to describe it in two ways first. So the original piece, it takes the form of a microfilm reader. And a microfilm reader looks like a computer, old school computer on a desk, big monitor on a table. And aesthetically, it looks like each panel is in bold colors, pink, orange, yellow, blue, so on, with bold black lines around the edges. But for the festival, it's going to take the form of, it's going to be viewed on a computer in the Royal Festival Hall, level 2. But it's going to, the way visitors interact with it is the archive is built up of a series of different themes. So when you log onto the screen, you'll be greeted by an introduction screen. And I'll give a brief introduction about the work itself. The archive is based on my life story, growing up as a black, disabled, working class boy in the 80s through to the 90s. And it consists of medical documentations, school reports, housing letters, social services letters, hospital appointments, me talking about my experience, or certain parts of my experience. And that's split up into different thematics. So at the beginning stage, it's pre-diagnosis, then it goes into diagnosis, then it goes to early stages, then it goes to on the move, schools, and leaving school, so on.
So yeah, you've talked about already kind of how it's kind of inspired by sort of your experiences and how it felt to be, disabled and black and kind of not seeing yourself, I guess, in a lot of these kind of archives. Can you talk a little bit more about particularly like the Wellcome Collection and why you were interested to work with the Wellcome Collection?
So originally, I saw an opportunity for a research bursary of Unlimited and Wellcome. So I applied and I was lucky enough to be selected. What interested me was I love medical stuff. That's been a big part of my life anyway. I could tell you my history off the back of my hand, like it was nothing. So I wanted to know more about what they had, but what they didn't have. So my original question was, for the research, was, is my lived experience represented in the working collection? And lo and behold, it wasn't. And so as I delved deeper, I noticed that certain themes were just happening. So it's just medical case, the medical case, not the medical model, is the prehistoric medical case was in full effect, and then the medical model also, but the fact that there was no real first person experience and there was no one with my lived experience, black or white or whatever. There was none of that. So for me, that was quite alarming, because if this period is not documented, what does it mean to not be documented? And what does it mean to be misunderstood or represented by someone who doesn't have the experience? So then I kind of, another opportunity came about to maybe apply for a commission to make a piece in response to the Broken Collection. And again, I was fortunate enough to be selected for the main commission. And I proposed to make my own archive based on my own lived experience, using my own medical documentation, testimonies, family testimonies, doctors speaking to my specialists, neurologists who have looked after me for 20 to 30 years or more, family members, working with a therapist, getting hold of my 9 volumes of medical records, finding using photos, speaking with my mum, school reports, all of the stuff that my mum had been collecting, which I thought, why are you collecting this stuff, Mum? But again, she passed away during the process of making the work, and that kind of shifted the work itself and how I wanted to initially kind of deliver it. But before she passed, I had confirmation that I wasn't imagining certain things, and the other disabled people that I interviewed also validated their experience. They're like, okay, we're talking about the same thing. So yeah, that kind of made me have more conviction in my story and owning it. I think as growing up as a British black person, kind of been programmed not to moan, and this is quite personal. This is the most personal piece of work I've made, and even thinking about it and people viewing it still makes me feel quite vulnerable.
Do you have any kind of ideas about what you'd like to do with this work in the future to develop it, or other places you'd like it to be seen?
So I think in terms of other places I'd like it to be seen is schools, disabled schools for children with different conditions and disabilities. I think it would be important for them to see that. I think medical students, so for instance, Loughborough University and trainee doctors, who I just gave a lecture to trainee doctors about Archive of the Unseen, and libraries, different galleries, or Leicester. I wanted to talk, but in terms of the development of it, this is one small section of my life. Very small section. For me, long term, there's other sections that I want to develop that I make into another piece of work.
Thanks, Christopher. Next, we spoke to Hassan El-Zafar about his work Here, Hearing Extinction and Audiological Relapse. Could you firstly kind of introduce yourself, tell us your name, describe yourself as an artist and what kind of work you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Hassan El-Zafar. My main work in the artist is in kind of multidisciplinary, intersectional kind of art forms. So I started off in theatre, but then broadly speaking now I've got into the kind of abstract art, and the latest piece, which was commissioned by Unlimited and the Art House, was actually an audio projection immersive experience. So in terms of my background, I was actually a science teacher, so a lot of my art is kind of like exploring the intersection between science and the humanities and the arts in general. So I would say that is probably my kind of USP, in the sense of bridging the gap between science and the humanities and taking ideas from science and showing how that could be represented or explored through artistic mediums.
Great. So can you tell us about the work that's at the festival? Can you tell us the name of it, first of all, and describe it, bearing in mind that, we can't see it right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the title of the piece is called Here, which is spelled as in hearing, so HEAR, which is also an acronym to Hearing Extinction and Audiological Relapse. Now, essentially this piece is an audio projection piece which allows users to explore 3 different environments, 3 different ecosystems. Those ecosystems are the mangrove forests, the rainforests, and woodlands. And what we do is we take people on a journey to hear what these places sounded like, what life sounded like in these places 200 so years ago, before the advent of man-made interventions and a human-induced climate activity, and essentially what they sound like today as an impact of climate change, climate catastrophe, reduction of biodiversity. But also there's a little twist. The twist is what they hear like today with people who experience sensorineural hearing loss. And so we really wanted to play around with this idea of bioacoustics, the sounds of life, and the idea that as species go extinct in an environment, an ecosystem, their sounds leave too. But in a similar vein, as you lose your hearing, certain frequencies and pitches go extinct in the sense that you can't hear them anymore. So we played around with those 2 ideas, and we created a space in which people could experience in a minute way what we were seeing. And that is aided, the sounds are then very much aided with projection. So if you imagine going into a place for people who are listening in now, you essentially go into a black box, and you will see essentially 3 different veils in front of you, and through those veils there is a projection, and through those projections, complementing those projections, would be the sounds of the ecosystem and the narrative of the story of the individual you're about to hear who lives in that ecosystem.
So can you talk a bit about how you came to this idea? Does it relate to things you've done before, or is it a subject you've been interested in for a long time?
Yeah, so I think that there was a personal journey to this. It's actually probably one of the most personal pieces I've done, as someone who now wears hearing aids very often due to my own hearing loss. I'm also a very keen outdoor explorer, and I think this idea probably was triggered by, at one point, me hiking through the outdoors, probably the Peak District, and then putting my hearing aids on and just witnessing how much sounds I was missing out on. Even though I thought I was hearing the world, I clearly was missing so much. And then there's also a personal journey in the sense of I'd worked in the mangrove forests in one of my very early stages of career as a science educator out there, and explaining the hidden impacts of urbanization in places across the world and the impact that that's had on natural ecosystems on the coastal lines. So there was that element, and then also it's also the first piece that I've been actively being able to independently work with scientists and artists as a creative producer in a sense, and bring active researchers. So Dr. Cindy Cossette, who was involved in this project, is an active researcher wwho goes out to the Borneo rainforest, literally gathers data from birds and orangutans and insects and lizards, and comes back and does her research here in the UK, and bridging that with fantastic composers like Leah Then, who works in theatre and in composition in various different contexts. So there was an element of the idea coming from myself, but then also this passion I have for bringing artists of different disciplines and scientists and other people from different backgrounds together, because also Will Monks was involved in this project, and Kevin Jenkins as projection designer and set designer respectively, and really creating a creative room where ideas which I have are able to be propagated and essentially brought to life in a really fantastic way.
Well, that goes really nicely to my last quick question, which is kind of where you would want this to go in the future, kind of, how would you develop it? Are there other places you'd really like it to go and be seen, either in the country or elsewhere in the world?
I mean, it's. I would love it to go to as many places as possible. I would love it to go to communities that don't traditionally engage with art. And so as the current plan stand, it's going to the South Bank Centre, and just before the South Bank Centre, it's going to this Big Feast Festival. I haven't started negotiations yet, but I'd love to kind of start negotiations with like theatres and also international festivals to kind of, because the piece is very, very, very tourable. It's, the ability to take it up and pick it up and take it other places is very easy. All the materials used in the piece were sustainable and can be kind of sourced sustainably anywhere in the world, essentially. It's essentially bamboo sticks and pieces of scrap. We made a conscious decision to really have the carbon footprint of this piece to be absolute minimal. I guess it's. There's also an online version of this piece too. It's not without the projections, of course. So you'll be able to hear the sounds and also dive into the research online. It's one of those things where if you get approached and you create a touring document and you send it out there, and we'll see where it goes. But it's sitting there as a complete art piece. It can be developed. Many people said, would you like to add choreography to it? It can be developed, but I feel that as simplicity is key sometimes, and the way it exists right now is it's simple. It doesn't overwhelm you. There's not too much happening, and it's quite easily tourable. So let's see how it fares touring in its existing form. But then who knows? In the future there could be ways to develop this piece, but also I think ways to draw inspiration from this piece to develop other pieces too. Inshallah, we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Hassan. Finally, we spoke to Shiro Masuyama about his artwork, Border Sausage. Hello, thank you for joining us. And can you tell us your name and what kind of work you make as an artist?
My name is Shiro Masuyama, Japanese artist based in Belfast, Northern Ireland.
That's great. And can you tell us the name of the work that's at the festival? And can you describe it for somebody who can't see it?
The name of my work called Brexit Sausages, because after Brexit, we cannot actually import sausages from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. My project is responding to that kind of condition of Brexit.
And can you tell us what it looks like?
I made 8 pieces of big sausage sculpture as a part of the project. I will carry these sculpture with boat from Scotland to Northern Ireland.
So will you be photographing it, filming it? Will it be recorded in some way?
I will document my performance with video. And I will exhibit actual sausages sculpture and also video documentary as a part of like a festival in South Bank Center in September.
So how did you come up with this idea? Where did the idea come from?
When I just kind of researching, when I was researching about Brexit, what kind of problem we are getting. A lot of newspaper was writing about, like sausages, actually. Like, and some local people just complain, like, like we cannot actually eat a certain type of sausages anymore after Brexit. People complain about that. Like, I just kind of thought it's kind of funny, like just to focus about the sausages for my project. I also aware, like like even England, Ireland, people like sausages, like like Irish breakfast. British breakfast, always sausage in the plate. Something I didn't tell you about the project is, like actually I will carry sausage sculpture with boat, and when I carry sausage with boat, like because I just made a sausage with fiberglass. And inside is styrofoam. Like so, it's I can actually float on the sea. So I just made 8 pieces sausages. Like each sausage, I can connect with cable. So something like when I float a sausage sculpture on the sea, something like looks like linked sausages. So when I just carry sausages with boat, like actually, this sausage line also kind of a metaphor of Irish sea border. Like which was created after Brexit.
Can I ask you a really basic question? The sausage sculptures, how big are they?
Something like 1.1 meter or something, like slightly bigger than 1 meter. Actually, I will also bring actual sausages on the Irish Sea. Like on the boat, we will have a sausage barbecue party before arriving Belfast. So people could see, people in maybe coast of Northern Ireland can see our boat and sausage sculpture. People can also see we are doing barbecue.
But they can't have the sausages.
Because we actually eat all sausages.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because if you don't eat them, they'll need to be inspected, right?
Yeah.
There is something just very funny about sausages. I don't know why, but they are just funny, and when they're big, it's funnier. And it's very silly, but they are funny. I don't know why. So for this project, what will be kind of left when you've finished? It will be the sculpture, the video.
So sculpture and video. The way I represent this project is, like as I said, I will show actual sausage sculpture. Probably, mostly I will hang from ceiling. I will hang actually a sausage from ceiling. That looks like a kind of a butcher or something. Like like a butcher sometimes hanging sausage from ceiling or something. Looks like that. And then I will also show the video with actually 2-channel video installation. And also the same time, like in front of video, I will also make a special carpet. On the carpet, I will print a map of Irish Sea. On the Irish Sea, like I will also mark like which route I just came to Belfast. And then on the top of carpet, actually I will fix some kind of a tiny sculpture of boat and sausages.
So finally, can I ask you what you would like, how you would like people to remember this work once they've experienced it? What would you like the long-term kind of impact of this work to be?
Maybe some people don't really get maybe my concept, but it doesn't matter. Like I also believe people can still enjoy what I'm doing. Like it looks kind of silly, and then like people also. Maybe because people are kind of interested about the sculpture. Maybe like if people also see the video, maybe people could maybe understand what I made this sculpture. So that's kind of thing. Like I made a kind of a layer, several layers for the project. From actual sculpture, maybe kids or people, like a lot of people, like maybe try to approach my work. And then if people also watch a full video, maybe some people also understand my concept.
Thanks, Shiro, and I can't wait for the sausages. This time we've heard about some of the visual artists showing work at the festival. Some of this work will be available remotely, so if you can't get to the festival physically, head to the Unlimited Festival page on the South Bank Centre website. There's a link in the description of this podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back to speak to 3 more brilliant disabled artists about their work at the festival. Join us then.
This podcast has been produced by Unlimited thanks to funding from the British Council. Unlimited is supported by Arts Council England, Arts Council of Wales, Creative Scotland and the Paul Hamlyn Foundation.